back to Cali, to Cali, to Cali. I'm going back to Cali. I don't think so. Going back to Cali, styling, profiling, growling, and smiling while in the sun. I hope you guys enjoyed that rendition of LL Cool J's Going Back to Cali. I was going to sing Tony Tone's It Never Rains in Southern California, but it does rain in Southern California, so I just went ahead and skipped over that. Welcome to episode number 3 of the Barbecue Booze and Life podcast. I'm your host, George, and as I mentioned in episode 2, I think I'm going to start getting in the habit of establishing my credibility for having a passion for barbecue and talking about barbecue, but I will tell you I have none. If you didn't already know, I was born in South Texas. I love barbecue. My friends love barbecue. We love barbecue from every walk of life, different part of the world. So that's our credibility. That's my credentials right there. So in this episode, we're going to leave the great Republic of Texas. Maybe we'll come back and we're going to head over to the West Coast, California. Now, what I've come to learn is California is really well known in the barbecue space for tri-tip. Growing up in Texas, I never tried tri-tip. Didn't even know tri-tip was a cut until I befriended this guy from Redding, California, who couldn't stop talking to me about tri-tip. I remember how the conversation was like, "Hey, man, you need to give tri-tip a try. It's hella cool, man. Cowabunga." And from that conversation, I headed over to H-E-B. I asked the butcher behind the counter. I said, "Hey, can you give me tri-tip?" I screwed up the first cook, but I've never looked back since. I lived briefly in Washington State, and big tri-tip culture out there also. And if I was in the mood for brisket, I would just get some tri-tip, smoke that up, and it's like you're just eating the lean part of the brisket. It was really good. Really, really good. But now you go to a Texas grocery store, and it's very likely that you're going to find it on the shelf already. So it wasn't a very common piece of meat to cook down in Texas. But now it seems to be easily, you can get it pretty easily. So California tri-tip. Okay, California tri-tip started its roots in Santa Maria, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, because there's a grill that I really, really love that I hope to have one day also. It's the Santa Maria Grill, and in this episode, we're going to touch on that too. But we're going to start off talking about tri-tip, which has its roots in Santa Maria, California, where it was popularized by ranchers. So if you didn't know what kind of cut the tri-tip is, it's a triangular cut, and you started to see a lot more of it in the 50s, 1950s. It was initially considered an inexpensive cut, not very desirable, but it became more popular because of its rich flavors and the versatility of it on the grill. I mean, I've seen people do tons of different things with the tri-tip cut. People smoke it. They use it in direct heat. They grill it directly. They're making sandwiches. I mean, they're just doing all sorts of stuff with it. I mostly just ate it just straight up. Maybe made a little chimichurri to accompany it. But, I mean, I really became obsessed with it. When you're preparing the tri-tip, a simple rub will do it justice. Maybe a little salt, pepper, garlic, maybe a little paprika. Kind of how you would almost season a piece of steak. And then you want to at least let it marinate for an hour. Okay, I have found that 30 minutes to an hour, if you're in a hurry, is ideal. All right, you want to at least go for the 30-minute mark, an hour preferably, way longer than that, of course. Okay, so the secret that I found to the perfect tri-tip is in the technique. Now, like I've always said, and I've said in previous episodes, a lot of things just depends upon your preference. You've cooked something before, you liked it a certain way. This is how I've found, and I have also seen people on YouTube this is what I have found them to use, this technique to get the perfect tri-tip. Okay, so, and much like your other cooking, you want to opt for a 2-zone fire because you want to give this meat a good sear. You want to throw it on high heat for a few minutes on each side so you can get that crust. I love the crust. That's part of my contention with using pellet grills sometimes is you really have a hard time achieving that crust unless you move over to like so what I'm looking for here, a harder surface to sear it on, maybe like a skillet of sorts or something like that, or you just turn the pellet on a really high heat and let it get really, really hot and then sear it. But I still feel like you don't achieve that infamous crust. Okay, so after you get that crust, so you want to move it to the cooler side of the grill and cook it indirectly until it reaches, of course, your desired doneness. And I've heard, and I've cooked it this way, and probably most of you out there like it this way, is medium rare. Medium maybe if you're, if you hate yourself, but definitely medium rare. Okay. So by moving it to the cooler side, you're ensuring that the juicy interior and the juices from the abuse that it just got from the indirect heat kind of spread back throughout the rest of the meat. And you'll achieve a flavorful outer layer and avoid burning it. Okay, so a lot of Californians swear by oak wood. You've heard me talk about this before. We like to use post oak down in Texas, so I think post oak would be a good choice. So, oak wood for smoking. It'll give the tri-tip a distinct smoky flavor that'll complement like the natural beef taste. Okay, so what is the result? What is the result of your hard effort? Well, you're going to get a mouth-watering dish that captures the essence of the beef in an outdoor lifestyle. My wife would say that was a little dramatic description. All right, again, like I've seen people use it for sandwiches, for tacos, on its own, like I like to do. It basically pairs with anything. I mentioned earlier using chimichurri. I also like to have maybe some kind of avocado salad on the side or some guacamole. I mean, the possibilities really are vast. Okay. So, grilling the tri-tip isn't just about cooking. It's about embracing the West Coast spirit, I've come to learn. Really, there's just nothing better than... there's going to be some people out there that really are going to dislike that I said that. But it's just, it's just one of those pieces of meat that I think if you got a small family and you're not going to repurpose a huge brisket, it's definitely a go-to choice for sure. Now, previously or earlier in the episode, you heard me mention that we'd be coming back to the Santa Maria Grill, or not Santa Maria Grill, but Santa Maria, California, and it was to talk about the infamous Santa Maria Grill. Now, you have seen many versions of this grill, and I don't necessarily think that we can give Santa Maria, California all the credit for the development of this type of grill. If you've ever been a part of some kind of party hosted by Mexicans, you probably saw a version of this grill. Now, same with the tri-tip, this type of grill gained its notoriety back in the 50s. What's unique about it is a famous way to cook on it, which is a very common way, is using the 2-zone cooking method, which, kind of involves, as we already discussed, hitting meat with some high heat at the beginning and then finishing it off indirectly. So you might have been to a parrillada and kind of seen this technique used. You might have gone to California and seen this technique used. I have never personally used a Santa Maria grill. I want to add it to my arsenal of grills and cooking methods. I have been to parties, though, where it's being used, and it's really fascinating because more often than not, what you'll find is, and I mean, this is true really all over the world, is you'll find some kind of pulley system that allows you to adjust the level of the grate. And I really find this to be, a good option to have when you're cooking, because sometimes, even though you're trying to sear, maybe there's some things you need to throw in at the last minute, or maybe searing kind of morphed into borderline burning your food. So the pulley allows you the flexibility to control the temperature more. And you control the temperature. You don't let the fire dictate how hot your grill is going to get. If your fire is burning still too hot and you threw the food on too early, or you feel like the sear is getting away from you, just raise the grate. You feel like the fire is not hot enough, even on the colder side of the grate, so just lower it. Get closer to your heat source. And that's really one of the things that I find very attractive about the Santa Maria grill. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I really hope to add one to my arsenal of barbecue items. You know, I really do think, you know, if you're someone that likes to sit by the fire pit too, it's a really nice way if you have one out on wheels or something like that. You've got a party going on, you know, your guests can, unless you're a guy that likes to get in the zone and you don't want to talk to anybody while you're cooking. You know, if you're a pit master who doesn't want to be harassed by your guest while you're at the grill because you're in the zone, then maybe you wouldn't like this. But if it's a little cool out, you know, folks are getting kind of chilly, they can come join you around the pit with their beer, with their water, with what have you, and you have some really nice. But if you're a guy that's in the zone, sometimes like myself, they can stick around and stay warm. Just make sure they don't talk to you. So, you know, there's a lot more things going on in California barbecue-wise that we're going to cover in future episodes than just the tri-tip and the Santa Maria grill. But much like the brisket is to Texas, I thought a good place to start when we travel to California is with the tri-tip and their famous Santa Maria grill. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can catch us here on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, also YouTube. You can find links to the YouTube channel and the TikTok page in all locations where my podcast is located. There are some directions on how to get to those places. I post a few videos about what I'm doing at home with barbecue just to kind of showcase there are people out there that are trying to make it happen on the grill, and we're not pros. We just love it. If you have any suggestions, some things you maybe want to hear in future episodes, feel free to send me a message. I'm always open to ideas. Because after we're done in the States, we're going to go international, baby. This is George. I had a good time talking today about tri-tip. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you learned a little something about the Santa Maria grill. You guys take care and grill on.